Hey everybody, and welcome to another Bronscast. This is Bronscast episode 15, and the Bronscast is called There's a Time to Rest and a Time to Rage. Okay, but before we get into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. I'm heading out on tour with Celtic prog band Celestial Fire next week, so that's going to be, we're now in 2018, so it's going to be September the 13th it kicks off. There's a few dates on there, so if you go to davebrons.com you can get the full tour dates and buy tickets. So we're starting in Bradford and then we're heading down to Sussex near London, and then we're heading over to Canterbury in Kent. So look forward to seeing you on the road, playing incredible songs by Iona and then Celtic prog stuff by Celestial Fire. What other housekeeping things are there? Okay, album 2, second album. So the crowdfunder for the epic second album is kicking off on September 28th. I'm going to be posting details on my website about that soon. But this album that's been 2 years in the making is finally, we're going to crowdfund it and get it made, so I'm really excited about that. And it's the epic album is almost here, just need to get the money to fund it. So anyway, let's jump straight into the topic today. So there's a time to rest and a time to rage. So by rage, I don't mean a time to start a fight. I mean just a time to really give stuff your all, to really, really go for it, and unleash the fury of productivity, not kind of start a war or a riot or anything like that. And there's a time to rest as well. So I'm going to talk about those two things and just share some thoughts on that. As you know, on these podcasts, we are talking about the journey of being creative. I talk a lot about the struggles I face as being a creator of music and a musician. And the idea is to share a bit of what I'm going through and hopefully inspire some of you to create things and, trying to share some wisdom of what it's really like when you're trying to make a living from music in 2018. So okay, so I guess I'm going to start. Firstly, just to say that on the rest front, I down tools in summer. I stopped doing any music stuff, stopped pretty much going on social media, stopped blogging, stopped self-promoting, stopped Facebook advertising, stopped networking and all the other million things that are usually on the go, and decided to have a complete break. I think in that time I actually recorded French horns and trombones and stuff for the album, and also went over to the studio to record some vocals with Sally, but those are things that I'd arranged beforehand, and we got those done. Sound great, sound amazing on the album, getting all those parts done. But apart from that, I really didn't do anything at all. And part of the reason for that is because there's just this kind of idea that goes around on the internet that if you want to be successful, you need to push harder, you need to work harder, you need to work smarter, you need to time manage super smartly so that you've got 13 things on the go, and if possible palm it off to somebody else so they do your work for you, that kind of thing. The general idea is if you just work hard enough, anything's possible. The problem, and I think that's a great message for those of us who are massive procrastinators, who perhaps just fearful of taking the leap into the great unknown. And and if you're a kind of lazy kind of person, then let's face it, most of us are quite lazy when it comes to doing things we don't want to do, myself included. And a lot of the things that I do around music aren't just sitting around playing guitar all day. They're the things that are quite mundane and boring, like trying to get more people on your email list and things like that. So if you're a kind of procrastinator, that message of push harder, work harder, be fearless is great. I definitely got to a stage though on my last December where I'd kind of just fed up, to be honest. And I think I do hit this stage every so often when I get to a stage of super busyness, like where I've got gigs lined up, I've got recording sessions, I'm trying to build some kind of social media strategy to promote my music and get more fans on board, trying to push my music to an ever wider audience, so I can make this more financially sustainable. I'm on this quest, as you know, to make the best ever guitar album, which is the second album I've been working on. So I've been composing for that and trying to collaborate with musicians and hire musicians for that and figure out how I'm going to pay for it all. When you're in that kind of cycle where it's all go, there's a certain amount of disappointment that you kind of face where things don't work out. And I think I got to a stage last December where I was just kind of really exhausted, and the joy just goes out of it. I mean, people say if you do the job you love, you never work a day in your life. What's actually truer is if you're trying to follow your passion and your dream, you have to work super hard. And I definitely got to a stage in December where I was just burnt out. I think what usually happens is, because I do guitar teaching in schools to support the kind of music making stuff. Through summer, often I earn very little money, so by the time Christmas comes round, we usually like money reserves are running low and stuff like that. So I feel this extra pressure, I suppose, where I think, man, I must be crazy trying to do this, because financially the margins are so tight. And so in the middle of all that feeling that, I was like, right, I need to launch the crowdfunder for the album. This is last December. I'm going to push, I'm going to get all these ideas together, I'm going to do the video. And I had this idea where I thought what I need to do is increase the size of the mailing list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a referral contest, and you know, if people refer people to the mailing list, you know, if each person just refers 2 or 3 people, I'll triple the size of the mailing list, and that's going to be great, and have all these new fans, and that's going to sort that out. And very quickly, that idea, which I'd invested all this effort into, just didn't work. And I don't really know why it didn't work, but it's clearly that very few new people joined the mailing list, and those who did got the free tracks and then left. So I was kind of really dispirited, and I started asking myself, well, who's setting this deadline to launch the crowdfunder? Like, the pressure was that I needed to hire and pay for some of the parts getting recorded. I need to hire some more musicians, and I just didn't have any cash reserves really to do that. So I was like, I just need to crowdfund this album. And you guys who support what I do, you were kind of saying stuff like, oh, we're desperate for this album. I'm like, I'm desperate for you to hear this album as well. Let's crowdfund it. Let's do this. If I just work harder, I can pull this off. But by the end of December, I was just like, I can't do this. I can't launch now. I need to hold off. The time is not right. And I realised, you know, that I needed to stop. But when you stop, when you're a creative person, there's a real fear, I suppose, that, you know, am I slacking off? Am I being lazy? And this kind of guilt comes in, that, you know, the idea of doing this thing that you love, you start to feel guilty because you don't feel like practicing guitar, you don't feel like composing, you're just totally unexcited by this amazing privilege that I consider it to be able to create music and make money from it, you know. But I just felt burnt out, and I realised I just needed to rest. And it's funny though, with the whole resting thing, I felt a sense of failure, but really we know that we need rest. It's like, it's not this new idea where if you stop and walk away from something that you're struggling with, you can come back and feel like you've just got a great idea. Because when you're deep into something, sometimes you become closed in and you lose perspective and you can't hear the idea and you just get stuck in the details. And so we know, it's a really well-known fact that if you take a break and walk away, you'll come back refreshed and quite often feeling more creative. But somehow we ignore this. And you know, even in my own life, Sundays, you know, for us growing up, and I was brought up in a Christian tradition, and Sundays were supposedly a day of rest. And that's a tradition that we still have on Sundays. We stop everything. We sit down. We have a family meal. We do Sunday lunch. We talk. We just stop. And the idea is that we take a break from doing work to just kind of get your breath down, to break the cycle. And I've spoken about that on podcasts before, where you can just get into this vicious, never-ending cycle where every day feels the same. It's just you're stuck in this kind of, there's no break. And I think as humans we need a break. And so even thinking about Sundays, you know, in the week, it's really become important ritual or tradition or whatever you want to call it, something that stems from my Christian upbringing, where you stop. But one thing that I've started to realise, that not only is it great to have one day a week where you stop productivity and switch your phone off and switch the internet off and all that stuff, and just go out for a walk and enjoy, just remember what being human's all about. It's good to have like a season of that as well, professionally, where you just take a step back and just try and have a breather. So that's what I've been doing this summer. And the great thing for me is, having had a summer where I've really stopped and done nothing. So not done nothing, done loads of family time. So we went on the West Highland Way and wild camped with my two boys. That was amazing. We went on a beach holiday to Cornwall and camped there and went to the beach every day. And when I sat down to write some music after that break, I wrote a tune all in one go. So, and that was amazing to me. Dave Bainbridge, who's producing my second album, says, I feel that we need a song to close out the album. And so came back off this break, sat down, and literally in about half a day I'd smashed out this composition, and it just came out so quickly I couldn't believe it. I mean, that never really happens to me. Usually I really, struggle with my compositions, and I've done podcasts about that as well, about the struggle of just trying to be like an archaeologist, where you're uncovering this composition from the dirt and you're just trying to, and it takes form through lots of hard work, and then eventually you might think, oh, it's pretty good, or it's not so good, or whatever. But this just came out all in one go, and I sent this composition to a fantastic Irish uilleann pipe player called Catherine Ashcroft to listen to, because she's going to be playing on a few tracks on the album, and she picked out that tune as her favourite of the ones that I sent her to listen to. So it's pretty much her favourite tune on the album. She said it was really uplifting and really moving, and gorgeous was the word. It's a gorgeous composition, she said, and that was super encouraging. And she's going to be playing on that, and it just made me realise that vibe that was in the composition came from a place of rest and a place of just creativity unleashed by the excitement of being digging into it again and just getting stuck in. It just came from walking the West Highland Way having seen the scenery that I'd done with the boys, the struggles that we'd had walking in the rain, having been on the beach with my boys and surfing, well, not surfing, I wish I was good at surfing, bodyboarding with them and seeing them experience things for the first time, and all those things that we did there. And the composition just came out of that. So resting is really underrated, but it's really important. That said, there's a time to rage, okay? Being tenacious is really important when you're creative, and one thing that I didn't do is, like, in December is say, right, well, that's it, this isn't work, I'm going to park it, I'm not going to finish it, I quit, I'm no good at this, although I might have thought all those things. Being tenacious is kind of having this thing of saying, right, I need the rest, but when it's time to go and rage and really kind of go for it, it's time to really go for it. You know, being tenacious is important. And one of the barriers that I've spoken about before is fear. And my fear, and the line I'm drawing in the sand, is this crowdfunder. So the crowdfunder launches on the 28th of September. So it's just in a few weeks' time. So I put it off in December, but it's come to the stage where I've got to draw a line in the sand and I've just got to really go for it. And you know, I do have fears around this stuff, like fears like, what if I don't make the funding goal? What if I don't get enough money to get this album made? What if I don't reach the goal that I made last time, you know? Like, what if people who supported me last time to make the album aren't interested anymore? You know, and all this, the fear of failure, we all have it, let's be honest. You know, if you didn't have it, you know, if you weren't afraid of failure, you wouldn't get the adrenaline rush of success, you just wouldn't care. So I do care, and the fear is always one of the things, like, you want to put things off. And the other thing you can do is you can prepare too much. I mean, I feel like, because I want to write my quest to make the best ever guitar album, you know, I feel like, because I'm on that quest, that you just want to prepare for every eventuality, and you want to super over prepare, and definitely preparing too much is another classic sign of procrastination, which I'm probably can be guilty of, where you just think, if I just take a bit longer over this arrangement, if I just spend a bit longer trying to, I don't know, get the perfect guitar tone or whatever, if I just write some more music, if I just add a bit here or there, or if I just set some more things to make sure I can't fail when we do the crowdfunder, and you end up doing so much preparation, really it just becomes an excuse of putting it off, and I'm definitely guilty of that. So September 28th, the line is in the sand. And in terms of knowing when it's time to really go for it, when it's time to really get the full creative rage on, I think overcoming the fear, the way I think of it is like a kid going on a diving board. And imagine a kid who's never been on a diving board before, and they go up to the lowest diving board and they think, oh, maybe, I don't know, gets to the edge, stands, looks down and thinks, I think if I jump in the water I might die. And after much thought, we've all been there, you go look at the edge, you think, oh, and then there's just at one point you've got to step off, and he steps off, jumps in, lands in the water, big splash, survives it, gets up and thinks, wow, that was amazing, and then has confidence to go to the next board up, and then that feels really terrified, thinking, well, I survived the last one, so maybe, but this one's higher, maybe I won't, maybe this is going to really hurt, but I know it's probably going to be okay. Jumps off, and then he goes up to the highest one where everybody looks tiny and thinks, now this is too much, now I must be mad, but finds the courage. And what's happening at each stage is the more risk you take, the braver you get. And you know, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable to a certain extent when you're doing something for the first time or doing something that involves risk. In my case, the risks are that if I don't get the money, it's going to take a long time for me to gather the money through record sales and other things of my first album to pay to fund the second album. The embarrassment of failing, I guess that's a thing for me too. But one thing I do definitely do mentally is when I look back at the failure I had in December to do certain things, I just see that as a trial run. That's like going up to the first diving board for me, and I start to process failures and non-starts and wrong avenues differently. I've started to see them as learning opportunities, and when I get criticism for whatever reason, I don't get too sensitive about it. I just kind of have to press on and understand that I've been here before, I've been in this cycle before, I've been afraid before, I've taken huge risks before, and some of them have worked and some of them haven't, but ultimately it's always a step forward. Every time you try something big, it's always a step forward, whether it works or not. And that's kind of human experience, isn't it? In the human experience, there's certain things that we can control, and there's so many things that we can't control. And I think part of getting ready, of understanding the resting and then getting ready to do the rage thing, is the creative raging, is just really enjoying the things we can control and kind of accepting the things that we can't. I think you can always work harder, you can always do more, you could always look back at I could always look back at music I produced and think I could have done it better if I'd just taken longer or whatever. But there's loads of things we can't control, and I think at some point you just have to make a line in the sand, climb up the diving board and jump off. But you've got to do that, I think, from a place of rest as well. I think you've got to do that from a place of sort of strength, really, and it's important. Well, it's certainly been important for me creatively to understand that some things just take a long time, and for something to be brilliant, like, it's going to take longer. And I think for me, the one big lesson that I learned from not going for it in December is actually there's been huge benefits to having like these extra 6 months to prepare. I've got more musical input, I've had more time to get sort of orchestral players involved and get their input. Loads of things have developed from the standpoint of getting vocal input on this album. So it is an instrumental album predominantly, but there's going to be a lot more singing that wouldn't have existed if I'd pushed hard in December to get the record done. The idea was that I was going to get the record done by summer. So there's been huge creative advantages of not only taking that rest and regrouping, but also just taking that extra time to get it done. But here we are. Now it's time to get going. So I think my closing thoughts on all these things are, whatever you face, even if you don't have a creative job that like I do, I think we all have things in our life where we pressure ourselves to be more and more productive, and to work harder. And whether you're working harder for your boss or for a project or trying to earn more money or whatever it is, I think definitely working out the creative benefits of rest, and then also the creative benefits of overcoming your fear, that balance is something that takes practice. So practice, and I say this to myself as well, I'm going to practice harder at getting off social media on the weekends and not getting sucked into that so much. I'm going to try harder to work as hard as I can, but then accept that if I don't have time to do extra stuff, that it's just going to have to wait, and things like that, So in whatever you're doing creatively, I just really hope that you're having a great time, and keep your eye out for the crowdfunder that launches on the 28th of September. Keep your eyes peeled on my website. Join my mailing list if you're not on it. If you head to my website, just at the top you can click on the banner and you get 3 tracks for free, and then a whole load of other things. Have a great week, guys. Thanks for listening.